What is up, y'all? It's Nelson, the owner and chief Cabana Boy of Cabana Boys Events, and welcome to the Cabana Boys Podcast. Today we have Niko Arapkiles, a energetics and mindset coach.
Nailed it.
Thank you. I practiced a lot before this started. Niko and I met way back. It's been like, what, a year now, roughly?
Yeah, I would say so. Maybe a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Niko's very much a connected person in Scottsdale, I'd say. Knows a lot of people in the entrepreneurship community. So we're going to get into how we met, how we've been working together, and a little bit more about his business and kind of the way he approaches life. So, but before we do that, Niko, are you thirsty?
I'm thirsty.
All right, let's break open.
Let's break our thirst.
The Cabana Boys cooler. Take your pick.
Oh.
I'm still on the athletic brewing train because I'm not drinking right now. But cheers, man. Thanks for being on.
Cheers, and thank you for having me on.
Of course. Well, let's just kick off. Like, tell us about yourself. Tell us about your business, and then we can get into kind of how we met too.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just a big fan of seeing things in your mind before it happens. I often share this story, but it came from playing baseball. I got really into visualization and seeing and feeling things before they happen. My mom gave me a copy of The Secret when I was 18.
Okay. I've got that in my bookshelf out there.
Yeah, I planted the seed, and there was one year I was in junior college, and then I really wanted to go play Division I, and I basically had one season to make that happen. And so I went all in on like the physical side of things, but then just every night before I went to bed, I would see myself hitting home runs off the scoreboard, specifically off the 7 of the scoreboard.
Okay.
And like a walk off. And I don't know exactly why that was. I just thought that would be badass.
Yeah.
So one game, it happened exactly the way I saw it. Like slow motion, pitcher just let go of the ball. Like I felt like chills went down my back before I even hit it. And
It was like a spidey senses, like time slowed down.
Yeah,
Wow.
I really can't explain it. And then I was rounding the bases, and I was like, whoa. I think at the time I realized like that was far bigger than baseball.
Totally.
And I think since then I've just been on this search and this hunt and this adventure to figure out how to repeat that more repeatedly and more consistently and more frequently.
Wow.
So that's where the story all started.
Yeah. So where were you playing baseball?
I was at a junior college down in Colorado.
Okay.
Very few people would know. It's called Otero.
Okay.
Out in La Junta, Colorado. Very small.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you grow up in Colorado?
Yeah. Yeah. I grew up right around Denver, in between Denver and Boulder.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you had this vision and it happened.
Yeah.
You realized it. With how long, and now you're doing that as your business, but like what was the time in between that happening and where you're at now?
Yeah. I mean, it was probably since that time, I want to say like, that was probably like 2012. And then I started the current business in 2022.
Okay.
So yeah, about 10 years after that. I never even really thought about that.
Was there any other times in that 10-year span that like you had, or you used visualization or manifestation or whatever you want to call it, and things kind of happened like you thought they would?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I incorporated a lot into business, and it was a lot more infrequent. And I put together things, I could go through training courses and stuff. And I one mentor that like had us put together this like booklet of like our future manifesto, essentially. I was like, and I would read it every day, and I would like speak it out every day. And I was really putting a lot of attention and energy into that. But then it just kind of like dawned on me. I was like, why don't we put this into like a more of a multimedia asset? Because I just love video, and I think it can really evoke emotions. And that's kind of why I look back on my baseball career and I was like, why was that so powerful? Why did that work so well? And it's because I felt it, right? So because I was very passionate about baseball.
Yeah.
And so when I would see myself hitting home runs, when I would close my eyes, I would literally feel it. And so that's why when I step up to the plate, I felt it coming. So I was really on the search, and it took me a while to like figure all that out, but I realized how important the feeling is to everything.
Yeah.
And so I was like, how do we invoke that feeling more? Because I know after talking with lots of people, same way for them, they're like, yeah, I write the gratitude, I do the visualization, but I can't feel it. And then I was like, all right, well, how do we help that?
Yeah.
So that's where everything came into like with the voice memos and
Right.
putting the emotional music behind it.
Yeah. So that's your business now.
Yeah, that's the business now.
Oh, that's awesome. So that's how we got introduced. We met at a entrepreneurship like networking event.
Yeah, shout out Josh Norris.
That's right, Josh. And I think at first I was confused. I was like, what is it? Like audio vision board? I've heard of a vision board.
Yeah.
Actually, I have a funny story about a vision board in a second, but I was like, hey, I might as well try it. And we, had our meetings and went through with it. And it's something I still listen to. I'm not exaggerating, like 3 to 4 times a week. And it's awesome. I really, really enjoy it. It's weird because it's just a like sneak peek. You're talking to yourself, and you're saying, yeah, hey, this is your future self. Here's what you've accomplished. Here's what you have in store, and very personalized and individual. It's weird to hear yourself talk sometimes, but it's like, in terms of feeling it, like I remember the first time I listened to it, like I was in tears. It's very moving. And the first time my stepson listened to it, he cried too.
Wow.
Which was just like, he didn't know what it was. Like he doesn't know what a vision board, let alone a vision audio is. And he's like, he was moved by it too, which is pretty cool.
That's wild. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
That's really cool to hear. Yeah. I mean, it really is my life's work, and it's the business right now, but I see us, it's just, I think there's so many components of it that are so special to me. I was raised in a childhood that like just a lot of love, and just so grateful for that.
Yeah.
And as I have grown up, I've realized how many people don't necessarily have that in their lives, and how many people don't really communicate how they feel to the people that they actually love. And it's so interesting to like give a gift of like really just like self-love to people.
Yeah.
And that's, I was telling you, I did a master class last night, and it was all in like self-love. And that's a big component of all this.
Totally.
And I think like the more that we can give that to ourselves, and then also give that to the people that we truly care about, it really shifts people.
Yeah.
And that was the exact kind of response we got from people when we first showed it.
Yeah.
Like everyone was like, I was in tears, and that was not even my video.
Right.
And it's a whole different ballgame when it's, it's actually connected to you. It's insane, man. I think that's, I'm just very passionate about it. I'm really excited about it. Because I feel like this world needs a lot more love, and I feel like this is a tool that can help them with that.
That's awesome.
While helping them like really get a vision. I'm so sold on vision because I believe that it really makes you magnetic, because like people that just know where they're going, they know who they are, they know what they're about. There's just kind of this alluring confidence to them that you can't even explain.
Yep.
And then it also gives you a decision-making framework. Like you're clear. And that's why like when you're clear on your vision, you know where you're going, you know who you're becoming, you know who you are. When someone asks you to go do something that's out of alignment, you're like, nah, I'm good.
Yeah.
Because you know where you're going. So it's really the process. And I would be curious, even if you want to share, like the process of even creating it, I think is one of the most powerful parts.
Well, it was a lot of the value was the creation process. Like, the like long tail value is you get to listen to it, and you get to, continue listening to it, as much as you want. But to have that kind of like opportunity to like look inside yourself and like realize who you are, what you want, what your vision is, was like, that alone is worth the money, but it's, when the question I actually was going to ask you is like, who are typically do you work with? Like, I'm an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. Are a lot of your customers also entrepreneurs?
Yeah, majority entrepreneurs.
Okay.
A lot of like what we're coming to find is busy entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
People that just have a lot going on. Because again, I use the word magnetic, and I really like that word, because think of a magnet. And at first when I thought about this word, I was like, oh, well, they just attract all the amazing stuff. But a magnet attracts things, but it also repels other things.
Yeah.
And that's really, I think, where we all want to be in life. Like, we don't want to be attracting every single thing into our life. We want to be attracting the things that are for us into our life, and we want to repel the things. So when I say busy, it was interesting because I went and did an interview with this guy. His name's David Meltzer, out in in LA, and his schedule is wild.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with who that
I
is?
think just through you. I think you mentioned it.
Okay, yeah. He built up $100 million real estate portfolio, lost it all, and just has this wild story.
Wow.
And he had it was so wild because we were at SoFi Stadium, we were doing the podcast, and he comes in, he's he's walking in, he's having a walking meeting coming in. Then he sits down, does the podcast. He has a walking meeting out, and he had 8 meetings while we were there at the stadium. And I was like, oh, busy day, right? And he's like, active. And it was interesting because I'm putting this presentation for next week, how to be magnetic. And we're coming to find out that our ideal client and just the clients that we have worked with are busy entrepreneurs. But I started looking up what does busy mean, and it means to fill a void, to fill space.
Okay. Yeah.
And then I looked up active, and it's ready for a charge or ready for something.
Yeah.
And so I really like to use that terminology because I think so many entrepreneurs, they have a lot going on, but they could be more magnetic where they're attracting more things in that are for them and repelling things that are not for them, so that they can be more efficient with their time. And I truly believe that's really what a vision does as well.
Yeah. Do people ever to have a very clear vision for yourself, I think is unique for people to have gone through the process in creating that. So do people come to you and say, hey, Niko, what you provide has a ton of value I want in, but I don't know what I want out of it?
Yeah, there's been a lot of that. And there's even been some people that are like, I don't know if I'm ready for it because I don't know what my vision is. And this is what I always say, is that it's really never early enough to have a vision.
Yeah.
And you're never done with your vision. Because it's change, it evolves.
Right.
We're always changing, we're always evolving. But again, just to go, my opinion is to go through life without a vision is you're kind of just floating in the wind.
Yeah.
And you're just going wherever marketing and advertising is taking you. And marketing and advertising is nuts these days.
I'm a sucker for everything. I remember one time in college, this is a long time ago, but I was sitting, in my fraternity house. I was probably, 20, 21 years old. One of my buddies, we were just watching TV and a Taco Bell ad came on. We looked at each other, got up, got my keys, went to Taco Bell, ordered, got back, ate. Not a word was spoken the whole time. That's how powerful marketing is,
Yeah, dude, it's crazy. I heard this stat that said, I think it's 30, when you're walking down the aisle of a grocery aisle, 35,000 different brands are trying to pull your attention.
God.
That's in a grocery aisle.
Yeah.
Talk about
insane.
social media when our dopamine receptors are just firing off kilter. It's crazy. I don't know how people do it. We were talking about TikTok and oh my gosh.
TikTok shout out.
Yeah, there we go here. But when you don't have a vision, you're not clear. That's why people end up spending 8 to 10 hours just scrolling mindlessly.
Yeah.
And it's easy to do anyways. If you do have a vision, I just think if you don't, you're just at the mercy of everybody else.
So when I reached out to you a couple weeks ago and I said, hey man, because you do a podcast, which we'll get into. Yeah. I was like, hey, let's do a podcast swap where you're on mine, I'm on yours. And you said, I'm interested, but I try to be very intentional with my time. Can you tell me more? And, obviously we're here, so it worked out. But I thought that part of your response is I try to be intentional or very intentional with my time.
Yeah.
It was interesting because a lot of people talk about, especially when they're doing yoga and that type of stuff, is living with intention or doing something with intention. But how does that connect with vision? This might be an obvious question, but I want to hear your perspective on it.
I love that you brought that up, and it's been a really powerful thing for me. I think intention is everything, and I associate that a lot with vision as well. Intention is just not being that leaf in the wind, is making sure that you are being, quote unquote, magnetic because you don't want to waste time. I think that's the thing for me is I don't want to waste time. I heard this recently and it blew my mind. The guy said, it was basically a training on sales and closing. And one of the closes was basically telling the person that you're going to invest in this in some way. You're either going to invest in this with time or money. Mm-hmm. Money because you're just going to pay me and then I'm going to help you get the transformation. Time is that you're going to say no to me and then you're going to go figure it out on your own. And here's the thing that he said I was like, oh my gosh. is that you're going to spend the one that you value least.
Oh, interesting.
So if you value time, you're going to spend money. If you value money, you're going to spend time.
Huh.
And so, I mean, I do my best to like continue to remind myself that I do value my time a lot more than anything else, because it's the one finite resource that we can never get back.
That's almost counterintuitive a little bit.
How so?
Well, so if you value time, you will spend money. Is that what you said?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe not. Maybe that is intuitive. I think I heard it the opposite way. Cause like if I would rather like washing your car, right? I'd rather like just go to a car wash and it be done in 5 minutes versus like getting out the hose and the bucket and the soap and that kind of stuff. I think that might be a good good
and
example.
it's an energy investment too. Like we only have a certain amount, we have a finite amount of energy throughout the day, and it's just like that stuff can drain out quickly. If you go and do your car and clean that up, like great, you save some money, but like you're drained, you're tired afterwards. Right. And then if you have something else, you want to spend time with family and friends, like, you're just not there, you're not present. And I think that's really where it comes for me too, is just being present and just being here.
Yeah.
I think that's really important to me.
There's a guy, Ramit Sethi, I think that's how you say his last name.
It sounds familiar.
He wrote a book called I Will Teach You to Be Rich.
Okay. Yeah, I think I've heard of that.
He talks a lot about his like living your rich life, which basically is like finding the things that you value and spending as much as you want on those. And then the things that you don't value is spending like next to nothing on those. So like if you love caramel macchiatos, go buy them like as much as you want, right? But if you're like, not that interested in, I don't know, some type of food or supplements or something like that, like don't spend any money on those things. And that budgeting is important, but it's more about like living again with intention. And people define the word rich in different ways. And I think that more so now than ever, like people are defining it less with dollars and cents as they are with like other intangible things. Yeah.
I love that you said that. I had a mentor that reminded me of a story that he shared with me. And it's funny because I said this to my barber recently. He was asking me some things and asking me how business was and all this stuff and like what I spend money on. And I was like, yeah, I'm bougie on myself.
Yeah.
Like I'm bougie on like investing into myself. Like I'll happily spend like, whatever, thousands of dollars on like a coaching program or course or anything like that. But I mean, I have a $20 t-shirt on. Right?
Yeah.
And you won't catch me wearing like designer or anything like that. And it's also kind of the stage I'm in. I'm sure I'll get into that as well. But I think that's exactly right. Like you spend the things on the things that you value. I like that.
So tell us about your podcast, which I had the pleasure of being on.
Yeah, thanks for coming through. That was fun. We had a great conversation hearing more about Cabana Boys and the whole journey you've been on. It's exciting.
Yeah.
My podcast, I love it. And I was just reflecting on this recently. We're coming up on 100 episodes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a huge milestone, man. Congrats.
Thank you. And I remember when I started it, a guy that I follow, he was a musician. He started a podcast, and he was a big reason on why I started mine, because I just saw kind of the growth he was having, the conversations he was having, the healing that was going on within him and all the people he was having conversations with. And he said something about that. Is like, the point is not to have like the downloads and the numbers. It's like the point of starting something is just to start it and do it. And that's really where it came from for me. Like it was a kind of a weird space I was in. I'd just broken up with a girl. I was kind of just dealing with a lot of career stuff, but also personal stuff. And I just remember having a conversation with a good friend, and I was like, I felt very present in that moment. And it was just, I kind of forgot about all my stuff. And I was like, wow, that felt good for, 30, 40 minutes. And then it was like a couple of days later, I ended up going up to Utah by myself for a week just to kind of get away and see if I could kind of just decompress a little bit with all the stuff going on. And I was on top of a mountain, and it just came to me. I was like, I'm going to start a podcast.
Nice.
And then I did a week later, and we did it kind of unique. We did it as an event.
Okay.
So we sat down, had a conversation, but then had a bunch of people sitting out, and Yeah, it was cool. I didn't know if like anyone was actually going to come when we invited people, but a bunch of people showed up, and I never really like cashed in on. I don't want to say cashed in, but I never like made a real strong ask to my network.
Yeah,
that was like the first time, so that's kind of why it like took off, and we had like 70 people there, and then everyone was like, "When's the next one?"
Yeah,
I was like, "Oh, I guess this is kind of a thing now," and it just like it doubled, and then it doubled, and then soon enough, I'm like in front of 200 people sharing our stories, and I was like, wow, this is really cool. And it just brought a lot of fulfillment to me, because again, every time I sit down, I have this conversation.
Yeah,
I feel good. I feel present.
Yeah,
this is where my happy place is.
That's really cool. You have another one coming up, right?
Yeah,
plug that.
Yeah, March 29th. It'll be in South Scottsdale. All the information is at justgrowpodcast.com, but it's going to be with a good friend. Her name is Samantha Harper. She's a sound healer, and just she's so intuitive, and just such a genuine human being that's gone through so much in her life already. She's survived cancer 3 times. So that just begins to kind of explain it. And the thing that we're going to talk about is really kind of how do you find that balance between what we call as the woo and the do.
Okay.
Because
I've seen that on your social media.
Yeah. And it resonates with me a lot, because, I was in advertising and marketing for a long time, and worked with some pretty cool clients, spent a lot of money on paid advertising, and it was fun and it was good. I got burnt out of it.
Okay.
And it was like I was just always in hustle, go, do mode. And then I like switched.
Yeah.
I went far and then shifted over to the woo side. I was just like meditating all day and not doing anything. And I felt really good, but I was also like, there's no money in my bank account.
You have to find the balance, right?
So it is. I think, and it's different for everybody too. But I think we do get to strike that balance, because if you swing too hard one side or the other, you will find that burnout, or you will find that stagnation. And I think it's just a matter of like figuring out how do you just navigate life the best way for you. At least that's my take anyways.
So when you say woo and do, the woo is more like woo-woo, or is it more like attract something?
Well, I just kind of like saying that because I kind of like making fun of stuff that I do.
Yeah.
Even like with some of these social media posts, I make fun of like social media influencers.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's stuff I've already done. It's the content I already have, and I'm just like making fun of myself, and everyone's laughing. So I know a lot of people call it like woo-woo, where it's like, it just doesn't make sense. This is just like hairy-fairy nonsense, which it's backed up by a lot of science, and I firmly believe in it. And we could get into like manifestation. I have kind of like a simple way that I explain it. But yeah, I just say that because it like, I think people kind of understand when I say woo, they're like, oh yeah.
Yeah,
okay,
that makes sense. So if there's skeptics out there that are like, I don't buy this like vision stuff, like The Secret and manifestation, like talk to me like I'm a third grader. Like, how does it happen? And that might sound like a very, I don't mean it as like a condescending question, but like,
no, I love it.
How does thinking about something translate to it actually happening?
Well, the one thing, it depends on like how skeptical the person is and how feisty I'm feeling and want to fire back. But usually, one of the things I would respond is like, have you ever worried about something and then it happened? It's like worrying is negative goal setting. Like the more you think about it, the more it actually happens. And the reason that actually does happen is because if you are worried, you're like experiencing those emotions of fear, scarcity, lack, and all of a sudden it happens. But the one I like to share a lot, because I think I heard this quote recently and it just like, it made so much sense to me, because it said that professionals take complex topics and make them simple. Amateurs make simple things complex. And so where I heard the most simple way to explain manifestation, it made so much sense. And it's basically just explaining creation. And you can take this as like creation of a human being or a creation of a plant. But think about how it starts. It always starts with a seed. You plant that seed, you nurture that seed, and then eventually that seed sprouts. Right? So with a plant, you put that seed in the ground, you put it in the dirt, you put the dirt over it, you water it, you put sunlight on it, you're nurturing it. And then all of a sudden, or not all of a sudden, but like constantly nurturing, eventually that's going to sprout.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with our minds. Same exact thing. You have a thought, you nurture that thought with emotions, and then eventually, after repetition of those emotions and those thoughts, eventually they come to reality. It's just like manifestation gets I would say sometimes can get a bad rap because people they don't acknowledge the positive things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if they're worrying about stuff and then it comes to fruition, they don't call that manifestation, but it's manifestation. But it all starts with that thought. And that's why it comes back to intentionality. Is like, how intentional are you being with your thoughts?
Right.
How intentional are you being with nurturing those thoughts? As long as you stay consistent, eventually that's going to happen.
So I think the like super skeptic would say like, well, just because I worry about something and it happened doesn't mean that I made it happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that you could like push it very positive or very negative.
My take on that is that I think this also comes into more of a faith conversation and knowing that like it's always a combination of God and free will. So it's like we're not in complete control by any means. And what I always say is like be intentional, but also like listen to God and just listen to your heart because he's placed things in your heart that are meant for you.
Yeah.
And there's one other thing I was going to say to that is, you know, our intentions aren't exact.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like there was something. It'll come back to me, but yeah, I would just say like everything's not exact.
Yeah.
But just, you know, trust the process and have faith.
So I feel like I have a superpower, and this might be kind of related.
Okay.
I feel like there's like a unreasonable number of times where I'll think about someone, and within a couple minutes they'll text me.
Yep.
That happened literally this morning. Like I was thinking about my buddy, and I had texted him yesterday, to be fair. It wasn't like a completely out of the blue thing, but he just texted me like literally 30 seconds after I had the thought. And there was another time I was like on the phone with my dad and stepmom, and it was like, this is a couple of years ago. I was playing tennis and trying to like get into it, and I couldn't break through. I was just like hitting a wall, losing to guys who I thought that I should beat. And my stepmom was like, you should just like play someone who you know is not as good as you. Like, you know, you beat them before, just like get your confidence back up. Within 10 minutes, that one guy I had thought of when she said that, hadn't talked to the guy in over a year. He texted me.
Yeah.
I was like, this is weird. This is so crazy. But I feel like it relates to
100%. I mean, I've heard this before, and I don't have all the rhetoric down, but it's essentially like you're sending out that electrical thought. Have you read Joe Dispenza by chance? He talks about the thought is an electrical impulse, and then the feeling is the magnetic impulse that brings it back. And so you sending out that energetic thought and impulse, it actually goes out to that person, whether they know it or not.
So this is where your energetics stuff comes in?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, like energy is that one thing that none of us can see.
Right.
So it's kind of hard to explain. But now that they have like started doing a lot of scientific backing of this stuff, that's where it really sold me.
Yeah.
But once you really understand energy, you realize it's one of the truest things that are out there. And it's like, I hear that all the time, and I've experienced that all the time too, where like you think about someone, boom, you get a text from them. I had a crazy one. This was wild. So so are you familiar with Hormozy? Alex Hormozy?
Yeah. I think that sounds super familiar.
Yeah. So I have a friend that I met at a mastermind years back, and he actually is like the guy that does all the editing for Hormozy and has made Hormozy like the guy. Really? And so I texted him, I made him a video. I actually made him like a kind of a sample vision audio type of thing. I sent it to him. I never heard back from him. Not that he got too big for me.
Yeah.
And then
Hormozy, you owe Niko a response.
Yeah, come on. And then it was like probably like a month later, he popped in my head. And then I actually logged on to Instagram like that next second. I saw that he posted the video I sent him on TikTok.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It's a real thing.
That's crazy. Did he tag you?
He did.
Nice.
Yeah, I got a little love on that.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, we're about at time here, but like I guess my last question is like for someone who might be a little lost, right? Maybe they're like in their 20s and they're not really sure where their career is taking them, or maybe they're, stuck in a relationship, or they're just kind of, trying to figure things out, which I feel like a lot of 20 somethings are. What would you say is like some words of encouragement or advice for them to help build their vision?
Great question. Two things. On that note, ask better questions. I firmly believe, I could talk for hours about questions, but I firmly believe that if we increase the quality of our questions, we increase the quality of our life. Because this comes back into like the work of the subconscious, which is essentially what these vision audios are all about. They just really seep down. And like to that point, like we take them through that whole process to figure out, we ask them a bunch of hard questions so that it gets them to think and really think and sit on these type of questions. So the better your questions, the better your life, because again, it's just going to signal to that subconscious, say like, all right. And one of the things that I really like to ask myself is, how would my highest self approach this? And if you can start asking like those type of questions, I've just noticed that like it gets me thinking better. And then the more I ask better questions, the more better questions come, and it's just kind of a trickle down effect. And then on top of that is obviously give yourself space and time to ask those questions. Yeah. Probably one of the best things I've ever done is go on those solo trips, whether it's to Utah. I went to Tulum for about a couple weeks, and just give myself some space, because we're so inundated with cameras and alcohol and you know, our technology. How often are we actually giving ourselves time to learn about ourselves? I think when we're lost, we don't understand ourselves. And I was that way for a long time. That's why I've gone in this direction, because I was so lost and I had to figure my stuff out. And then eventually like I could start teaching other people. But that's been a superpower for real, is like spend quality time with yourself, because how do you get to know anybody?
Sure.
How do you and I get to know each other? We sat down and we had a conversation. We spent time together. We weren't sitting next to each other, texting and
all
that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Sadie's about to make a
up, Sadie?
Cameo here at the end. Well, Niko, this has been awesome, man. Where can people find you and what you're building?
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate you asking. And again, appreciate you having me on. Best place to connect with me is on Instagram and just on our websites. So justgrowpodcast.com, as I mentioned earlier, for the events and the podcast. Just Grow Visions for the vision audios. And then my Instagram handle is NikoArapkiles. And then the other one is official Just Grow.
Cool. Love it, man. Thanks again. Appreciate you being here.
Yeah,
thanks for all for listening. Catch y'all soon.
Thank you for listening to the Cabana Boys Podcast. Please like and subscribe to get new episodes as they're released. Write to the show by sending an email to the Cabana Boys Podcast at gmail.com. You can find the video version of the show on YouTube at the Cabana Boys YouTube channel. The Cabana Boys and all other related brands are also on Instagram and TikTok at Cabana Boys Podcast, the Cabana Boys, the Cocktail Cowboys, and the Cocktail Boys. This has been a T-Door production.